Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So we had several people at our table really inspired by Mr. Pennington's comments about getting involved, and the question is how? How do you visit a jail? We guess you can't just walk up and walk in the jail. So how do we do that, and what programs can people get involved with to do the type of thing you're talking about?
Is this thing working? All right. I love a microphone. You know, this is a very interesting subject, and it's something that's going to be growing and emerging. But for about the last 15 years, I've been working with a small nonprofit called His Way Ministry. We used to have local prisons that we could go into and provide mentoring and pre-release training, what I call reentry preparation, at Lieber and at Coastal Pre-Release Center. There's also representatives of Jumpstart in the room. Well, where are they? They just went missing. Jumpstart is at Lieber. Are y'all still able to go in, or has the lockdown continued? Okay, good. Well, what I just talked to the director about is that the dirty little secret, I mean, he presented, and I applaud everything he's doing. He's wonderful. He's great. He gets it. But we've had a real terrible crisis in our Department of Corrections with understaffing, so much so that it's become dangerous. And whereas in the 2000s and up to about 2012, 13, volunteers would go in weekly, almost every day, to work with inmates at Lieber. They haven't been able to do that in the last couple of years until we get this staffing thing straightened up. That's why you need to tell your lawmakers to fund our Department of Corrections so that then we can go in and help. So there are a variety of nonprofits that go in and provide visitation, and I mean by that, you can go in and do Bible studies, that's great, but I really would invite churches and organizations like this to think deeply about a reentry process where you welcome people when they come and out the door, so that they come to your church and that they meet you and that they make connections. We all tend to, you know, you become what you eat. I eat too much sugar, and you look at me. And the reality is if you consume bad ideas, bad things happen. And so, but if you're around positive people who love you, it's a game changer. So we can talk in more depth. The Jumpstart has an elegant, a year-long curriculum where the men are, it's a Christian-based program, I believe.
It is, it's an adjunct to the Kairos program.
Right. Right. I would just say this, if you really are interested in this, give me your name and address, and then we can be in touch. We used to have the Low Country Reentry Initiative, which had all the professionals, the usual suspects, plus a wide variety of people like Lee Moultrie and all kinds of different people who were working on supporting all the entities that are helping welcome people back effectively. This is not just a do-gooder thing. There has to be accountable. People have to be responsible. But there is I think, a real hunger on behalf of a huge majority of the inmates to find a healthy path out and to be able to sustain that healthy path. And it works to not only their good, but you know, it's sort of been transformed my life in terms of working with folks and having the benefit of seeing their struggles. They're so much more brave than I am. These people that have nothing, and they're so generous and kind to one another. There are profound lessons that can be learned. It's a real opportunity and a grace-filled thing.
Thank you. Is it all right if we go on to another question, or you got one quick?
I'm assuming you're asking about the local jail too. Okay. And right now, our biggest volunteer program is our chaplaincy. I think we got 40 to 45 volunteer chaplains come in. You do not have to be a minister or ordained. We would love to see some other functions and some other programs come up. We had tremendous success several years ago. Matter of fact, we presented at a White House summit on a welding program that we had for people who were in jail for child support. It's 62 people go through it altogether, and I think last time we looked, only 3 ever came back to jail. So that anything with job training, and I really like this idea of a second chance employer. If you have, if you're somehow associated with a business that needs to hire people that don't require a lot of training, but I will tell you that successful reentry programs don't involve McDonald's or Burger King. That's real work. It's not minimum wage. It's living wages. That's you've got to look at this more than, you know, we'll get them a little job first, and it's got to be more than that. But anybody who has any ideas about programs, we're very open to trying anything new.
Good, thank you. Lisa.
Okay, at our table, how widespread are these improvements in South Carolina and the nation? And one of the examples that someone brought up at the table is over the past summer in Atlanta, a friend was arrested for driving on a suspended driver's license. And, you know, we just want to know, is this widespread throughout the nation that these improvements are being made?
I didn't hear the question. I'm sorry.
Are these improvements widespread across the nation, or is it more particular to our community? The sorts of improvements that you're discussing today, are they across the nation, or is it more just in our community?
As far as the pretrial innovation of having counsel and objective risk assessments, this is pretty new. And so it is only in place here in Charleston County for South Carolina. We knew that there were cities all over the country. There were 192 counties in the United States that competed for this MacArthur grant. They were only awarding 11 of them. And so we were blessed to get one of those 11. But they're now looking to try to expand it more. I think in the local southeastern region, you see it maybe the pretrial risk assessment tool in places like some places in Virginia, Charlotte, maybe Miami, and Christina will know more.
Florida as well, there's jurisdictions that have it. It's, you know, this is reform that's going on throughout the nation, but as Mr. Pennington said, in South Carolina, Charleston is very fortunate to be leading the way in a lot of these areas for the state.
Okay, good, thank you. Patrina.
So first, I would love to thank all of the panelists, because our minds have kind of been blown at our table because we had no idea of all of these amazing things that were happening in South Carolina. So thank you all for informing us. That's been great. One of the themes at our table has kind of been prevention and diversion. So my question to the panel is, what areas of prevention and diversion are your organizations working with collectively or individually? For example, we're talking about pretrial, but are there pretrial diversion programs as well in addition to the pretrial, whether or not someone gets to stay in jail or gets bonded or stay confined? And then are there any areas of prevention that we're working on?
So is there a person here you're generally looking to answer this question? Would that be you, Judge?
As a collective, actually. So.
Okay. Would you like to go ahead?
One of the things one of the words I'd like for you to start using instead of pretrial diversion is deflection. Diversion means that somehow you're going down through the tube and you get diverted one way or the other. Remember, I'm big on semantics. What we'd rather see is have them deflected from the system, which is why the risk assessment tool for police officers on the street is going to be important. There are pretrial intervention programs that, if it's your first offense, you may be able to go through this program and have it erased. As far as a conviction goes, that helps. There's not a lot of others. The judges, I think, try to look on a regular basis with how to move somebody out of the jail that's especially first offense. And Judge Lennon, you might, I mean, they have tremendous latitude. We don't. Like Christy said this morning, if a cop shows up at the door with someone in handcuffs, we have to take them. We don't get to try the case right there at the door. And they stay with us until a judge says they can leave. So that really puts us at a disadvantage.
I can add a couple things. At the Public Defender's Office, we've tried to become more holistic in the last decade so that we now try to research what's going on in the community and find ways to bridge people to resources. A brilliant example of that is, where is Amy Barsh? Amy, right here. This woman is a pioneer in the Low Country on the delivery of cognitive behavioral counseling for people that are in jail and out of jail. Cognitive behavioral is that you begin to think about how you think, and you begin to role play and begin to develop empathy for the people you've hurt, and role play how you're going to deal with stressful and dramatic and angering kind of situations so that you can do better. And that's just a tiny piece. But it's very well thought out, and it has objectively been verified as being a hugely important and successful tool in helping people avoid recidivism. So it kind of marries up with the things that we're talking about, employment and maybe finding purpose in your life and finding a supportive community. Huge partners in the Low Country is knitting in the mental health system that's also present in the jail and having it in the schools. And so we have, from what I understand from the school district, there are representatives in every school from the mental health department to deal with some of those challenges. Substance abuse, dealing with the pain of life not well by using substance is an epidemic in our culture. And so what we see is a huge need to address that. Some folks particularly just can't stop. There's a lot of pain out there, and so recovery from those things. There are a variety of both state and private treatment programs that we utilize. And then you have to have halfway houses, places where people can go. If you're talking about prevention, though, with kids, churches are involved in prevention. It's the tapestry of our community is what prevents folks from losing their way. And so the work that you do in your local parish and engaging families and helping kids, hugely important.
Oh, pretrial intervention, I think.
You got one right there.
It's not working. Testing. Oh, yes. I think pretrial intervention, when it comes to us, come to the courts, there's certain offenses that if they choose to, to go that route. But, one of the major offenses of pretrial intervention that folks now decide not to take is, first offense, simple possession. Well, it used to be where your license would be suspended if you're found guilty. And of course, so therefore, when they come before us and we give them that option, knowing what's going to happen, or they'll hastily go to PTI. But now, I try to give them all kinds of reasons to go to PTI as far as, now, if you're arrested and this with some possession and you want to get a job and this is on the record, the sense now that the law has changed. Your license is not suspended anymore, so they choose not to do PTI like they used to for simple possession. But what I would say to them, look, when you go to apply for a job, and this is on the record, this could hinder you from getting a job. Also, from furthering your education, this could prevent you from getting a grant. So, but they choose not to. Of course, there's a cost of a PTI, and of course, and it's being encouraged. And there are others to minor possession of alcohol, etc. These are still offered. So there are things that are out there that we try to do, but for whatever reason, and just me, that. It's not, to me, I don't think it's worth the while going to PTI when it's going to cost them just as much, if the fine may be sometimes even lower, but they don't see the long run on this when they go to PTI and get this stuff off of the record, because if they complete it, yes, this would be erased, they would be found out guilty. Only get one time to do this in your lifetime, though. So.
Okay, good, thank you. Papa.
I thank you all today for coming here and informing us. My table came up with a question. What is the biggest obstacle to effective bond reform? And if there is one, how could we eradicate it?
You go first.
This is the biggest obstacle to bond reform. Is that what it was, Papa? Okay.
I would say that we're on our way to dealing with the obstacles, and so to get really down into the weeds, we need a little bit more money to be able to cover all the people that are coming through. Our reach rate right now on a good day is we're able to screen about 70% before we run out of time and have to go on to court. So there's a 30% group that's just not getting interviewed. And so when I had a meeting with the lawyers in my office on this week, and they were like irritated and upset that we're just not reaching everybody, but we just don't yet have the resources to do it. And so we've taken on a major new challenge, and there's just more work to be done. So we just have to keep working on it, keep pressing.
Many of you may not be aware that there's a movement across the country. New Jersey was the latest state to do this, that got rid of cash bonds. And so that means the end of the bonding companies in New Jersey. That's happened in a number of states around the country. Senator Rand Paul, a Republican from Kentucky, and Senator Kamala Harris, Democrat from California, has already introduced a bill that would do away with cash bonds altogether. And the bonding industry has really, they pulled out all the stuff. They had dogged a bounty hunter and his wife at a press conference. That's how bad it's gotten in New Jersey. A woman whose son or daughter, one, was killed by someone who had been released on their own recognizance, is suing the state because for some reason they believe that if they had a cash bond, they would not do the same criminal things they do now. And I'm not going to say this because he's here, but since the question, Greg Mullen, you're going to hear from him in a little bit, retired chief of police in Charleston, was instrumental, and so were several other people locally and around the state. And one of the biggest problems that we were facing is people who committed a violent crime and got released on bond. And by the way, I get notified by text every time a high-profile individual, high-profile, dangerous crime or substantial narcotics crime, if someone's charged that, gets out on bond, and they routinely get out for when they've got a $250,000 bond. A family puts up property, or they've got drug money they can pay it with. The guy that can't get $200 together is sitting in jail while the real criminal walks out. That law that I'm talking about is if you're out on bond on a violent crime and you commit another violent crime, it's not just go before the judge. Now, the magistrate, they have to go to circuit court, and it's not within 24 hours. It's really one of the better things that we've done. And we've got enough laws. You know, I don't think there's another law that needs to be written that needs to be enforced. But that change, that improvement of bond laws is going a long ways in protecting the public.
Okay, Herb.
Thank you very much. And like Patrina, as she spoke for her table, our table has been essentially blown away by what we learned from the three of you. So thank you so much for being here and for telling us these things. Along the judge spoke a lot about the constitutionality and cases, and of course defense attorney spoke about that. And we have recently seen in the paper, and we may stand corrected on this, but there was an article about defendants that couldn't get a defender, and judges were sending them to jail without the benefit of any defense. First of all, is that true here in South Carolina? And number two, how can South Carolina get by with that if it's completely unconstitutional?
Yes, we thank God for the
Go ahead, Judge.
our new Chief Justice, Justice Donald Beatty. Of course, this is what he saw. It's been something that we were doing here in South Carolina. All of us were doing it for some time now, in contrary to the Constitution as it relates to being afforded counsel. What happens? What these cases all involve, like I say, is most of them are TIAs. You know, of course, when a person, they don't even come before us, but they've been cited out there for some offense. They don't come to court. So what we do in a case like that, we find them guilty in their absence. And we send out letters to them saying, okay, you have 15 days to come and take care of this. If you don't do it in 15 days, a bench warrant will be issued for your arrest. What that bench warrant says, okay, 30 days, $400 or 30 days in jail, or whatever but it says, it's give you an option. What we are saying there, persons never came before us, never been afforded their rights, and we now are sending them to jail by virtue of giving them that option. They're not going to pay, or maybe they don't have the money to pay. Well, before they can go to jail, according to the Chief Justice, and I agree with him, that person must be. Now, we can fine them all we want, long as there's not a jail sentence with that. But what we're saying with the bench warrant, we're sending you to jail, or you got to pay this or pay that. So what he's saying, that is unconstitutional. So what we now been ordered to do, what I've done, and what I think a lot of the judges in the state of South Carolina, summary court judge, we deal administrative. We're chief judge, magistrates, and the chief justice gave us some authority to do certain things. So we would call all those bench warrants. In Charleston County, we got about 3,500 bench warrants out there. They have been recalled by orders. Those persons now, it's going to be reissued, give them some letters to appear. We have to get them in front of us. But let me tell you what's going to happen. If we send out this letter again, we will send it out saying, now, you have another date to come before us. If they don't respond to that letter that we sent out, we got to give them that. There's a new bench warrant that's coming out. It's coming out at the end of the month. That bench warrant is going to say specifically, arrest this person. Actually pick that person up, bring the person in front of the judge, that issuing judge. If that judge is not in session, you take him to the bond hearing. The courts, it's almost 24/7. But if not, you take him to jail, but you have to bring them as soon as the office of that court is open, or that bond hearing judge, you have to take it to them. That person then will be given an opportunity. Here's some option. All this is going to be worked out administratively. Now, you have an option to do a time payment. They're going to be afforded their rights, obviously, if they say, well, okay, now I'm going to exercise my constitutional right to have an attorney. So we're going to have to, in essence, retry that case. But if the person chooses to go on, well, I was guilty, I don't have it, etc., we must give them every opportunity. Okay, we're going to set you now on a time payment. Pay what you can afford, but you must pay this particular fine. And also, if you see Amendment number 8, as it relates to excessive bail, also try to do as minimal a fine as you can, because there are hardships that are placed on a lot of folks that we were expressing. People are trying to make a living, trying to make ends meet. So what can we do to help those persons? Well, we are holding them responsible for what they have done, but we try to do it in a way that they can afford. If you can't afford it, then you just put another burden on them. You've just assessed them with a fine that you know they cannot afford. So what are you doing? You're just in this. So anyway, that's what is all required. We're just following, and I think it's good. And even though there are folks who really, have some issue with it, but I think it's very clear, and we're going to do our best to make sure we fulfill that directive and his memorandum. Thank you.
And we want to thank this panel. Round of applause, please. We're going to thank this panel, and I'm going to let the sheriff speak, because he may see me one day out on the highway and remember me.
That's exactly right. That's what I was planning to do with Margaret anyway later on today. One of the biggest problems that law enforcement is facing right now is diversity in our ranks. And I just hired one that's going to try it in technical college that was introduced earlier. I'm going to try to get
Bianca.
on board. Right now we have almost 270 deputy sheriffs in this county, and I have one black female. And as heavily as we recruit, I'm not sure why any healthy black teenager in this country would aspire to be a law enforcement officer with everything that they hear about, and I'm sure what they hear at the dinner table too, about how people have been treated in the past. Well, folks, I need some black families to grow me some cops. And every other police department in this state and country needs the same thing. So that, if you don't, they call these ask. I was supposed to ask y'all to do something. Get me some minority officers It's extremely difficult to recruit them. We have an Explorer program that is terrific that we can get them involved in, and we can put on ride-alongs. If you want to, let me invite all the adults that are here that may or may not want to be a cop, but want to think about getting your son or daughter to do it. Call me. We'll put you on a ride-along. We'll let you get in the patrol car and ride around and see what it's like to be a cop. And I didn't anticipate any questions, but please, and that's just not sheriff's office. Every one of us are under the same problem with as far as that.
I don't have questions, I have a statement. You talk about wanting an African American. I have a grandson that's with the government. He's in the National Guard, Army National Guard. He's coming back to Fort Lander. He has a desire to be, and I know Chief Mullins, Charleston Police Staff, for a ride along. I'll give you your name and number. So do a ride along, because I got one coming that's going to be good.
Good, thank you.